The tree is already cut. Which way are we going to fall? We can fall towards freedom, or we can fall towards authoritarianism. So, just open your eyes and look at this. If there's going to be a crash, it's going to be in the bond side. It's going to be public debt all the way across the board.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Martin Armstrong, founder of ArmstrongEconomics.com. Welcome to the Goddard Report, and it's good to have you back.
Oh, it's nice to be back.
Well, first we want to discuss something that's very interesting in your newsletter, turning water into gasoline and whether oil is or is becoming obsolete. But we don't want to ignore the gold and silver markets. Your forecasting array called for panic in the last week of November and a pop this week. How accurate was that?
Well, it seems to be, pretty much on target again. The computer does a good job at this stuff. You really can't, honestly, I don't think anybody can really do forecasting from, off the cuff. It's just everything's so interconnected. And the slightest movement in one area, impacts something else. So we have, a crisis in Japan and Europe as far as currencies are concerned. That pushes the dollar up over here. And these things have major impacts all the way across the board.
December 1st, gold and silver had massive trading swings in price. They both put in outside days to the upside, and silver put in an outside month in the first trading day of December. Do you have any insights that you would care to pass along to our listeners?
Just that, this is pretty much what we were calling for, a seasonal, pop in this thing. But, it doesn't change the long term, as far as that is concerned. Eventually we still have to, make new lows, and then after that, then, everything will change. But we have to have the entire world economy change.
You wrote on gold and silver for subscribers in September. Do you have any plans on updating the material?
Yes, we will. We put out a major, report as far as the timing for benchmarks, what price targets should be achieved, and the dates for the low. But we'll naturally update that because that is the longer range is fine, but the shorter term, you begin to run out of the forecast on the weekly stuff. So. But monthly, quarterly, yearly, all that goes out till the turning points. So
what would you see for gold and silver over the next 6 months?
Pretty much what we wrote in the report. There should be just a seasonal rally, and then you end up with a final decline. But, we have a lot of things developing on a global scale that are very serious. And so a lot of the stuff that people talk about on the gold and it's not just supply and demand. It really isn't. They were touting the Swiss vote, but, the polls were showing that, people were, the younger generation doesn't really think about it like the older generation does. If you go to Starbucks, you'll see they just hold up their cell phones and they pay that way anymore. It's really, I don't see the central banks really supporting gold like they used to. And the more they get into trouble, you're probably going to see some more official sales. That may, form the final lows, but they have no intention whatsoever going back to the gold standard. That it's not in their best interest, and that's what this is all about. People that think that government is out there to protect you, care about you, they're not. They're only interested in surviving, and for themselves. That's it. It's self-interest.
Yeah, get reelected.
Pretty much. I've worked with politicians around the world, and honestly, I understand their point of view. It's kind of like, all right, if a guy is standing at the bottom of a hill in San Francisco, and he comes up to you, and he says, "I just saved your life," and he holds out his hand, and you say, well, "Yeah, okay, how did you save my life?" He says, "Well, see, there's a car at the top of the hill. It started to roll. It would have came down here and killed you, but I jumped in and put on the brake. So what was it worth to you?" You going to believe him?
You didn't see the car.
Exactly. So this is the way a politician looks at it. If he says, vote for me because I saved your job, you go, how? Oh, because I did this, that, the other thing, and people go, yeah, I didn't see that. So from their perspective, they would much rather see everything crash and burn and then say, see, vote for me and I'll go get the guy that did it.
Oh, the Marshall Plan.
It's basically, that's the way it is. I mean, I worked very hard trying to, revise Social Security. I was donating my time down there to set up, this is how we do it. We bring in people, we look at their track records, we allocate the money out to be managed. And honestly, I couldn't get past most of the problem was all about, well, gee, if the Democrats come back in, they want to be able to change who manages it. I said, this has got nothing to do with your brother-in-law. And that's what it's all about. It's who can rip off as much. It's not about the country. They really do not care.
Well, maybe if we just go back to the markets for a second, you stated if the Dow took out the November highs that we should look for targets in the mid 20,000s. Will the Dow continue to go higher into 2015.75?
It still looks like we're pressing higher. And, there's, major resistance on the Dow in around the 22, 23 area. Going up to there is not anything really strange and abnormal yet. I mean, if you pass that area and we continue past next October, then we could be into what we would call a phase transition. And now you're looking at potentially the Dow could go to like 40,000. And you have to ask why. I mean, you have so many of these people saying, oh, it's going to crash and burn. Okay, fine. What are you going to do with your money then? Are you going to go buy government bonds and pay them 10%? Because you're saying, what they're basically saying is if the Dow's going to crash, then you always go to the flight to quality. The flight to quality would be going to government bonds, and you would have to go negative now. So are you going to give the government 5% or 10% to hold your money? I mean, they're not thinking this thing through. The 29 scenario they keep touting about was very nice, but that was a serious crisis on the private side. We are now dealing with excess on the public side. This is really a bubble in bonds. It's not, commodities and stocks. That's not the risk. The risk is basically the bonds. You have interest rates down at such low levels, going negative in Japan and Europe. They're desperate for people to please borrow some money and start the economy. But people will not do so unless they see an opportunity. It's got nothing to do with the level of interest rates. They simply refuse to look at honestly objective analysis.
Well, companies
we took the entire interest rates. You can go on our site and you look at them. The stock market's never peaked with the same level of interest rates twice.
Well, when you say nothing to invest in, I take a look at corporate profits. They're using them to buy back their shares instead of building new plants and employing more people. Are they killing their own future by doing that?
It's exactly what they were doing going into 1929. It makes a shortage in stock and it pushes the prices up even higher. But what I hear from, I was just in Europe, everybody is like, where do I put my money? That's why real estate's been booming in New York and London. They're just trying to get off the grid. You have the G20 in Australia coming out saying they're not going to basically, whatever you have in a bank, they take it to bail them out. That's it. They're not going to write a check again. It's your money that's on the line. So the smart people are saying, wait a minute, I don't want to keep my money in the bank. So what are they doing? They've been running into real estate. They've been running into U.S. equities. That's what's going on. I mean, the average guy's not in the market because he keeps listening, oh, this is overbought, this is going to crash and burn, blah, blah, blah. And the smart money's going, well, even if the stock market goes down 20%, that's still better. I got 80% versus 0 if I leave it in a bank.
What could we do to change that? Or is it beyond the powers of the ordinary person?
It's beyond the powers. I mean, you do not get change without the pain, honestly. If you look at 1933, yes, FDR came to power. So did Adolf Hitler, and so did Mao. The tree is already cut. Which way are we going to fall? We can fall towards freedom, or we can fall towards authoritarianism. That's what I'm concerned about, because this is only getting worse. The NSA is out looking for absolutely everything. They're hunting people. They're about ready to start taking the gold out of your teeth. They are desperate for every penny they can possibly get just to pay their own pensions. So, just open your eyes and look at this. And if there's going to be a crash, it's going to be in the bond side. It's going to be public debt all the way across the board. We just published a piece on the IMF papers, working papers on outlining how to take a haircut in sovereign debt. They know it's coming. They're just going, whatever people have in government bonds, they're anticipating they're probably take, a third loss.
Is that one of the reasons why China has been buying every scrap of gold they can find for the last 3 years?
Well, it's not just gold. They've been buying more of other commodities, food, stuff like that. They really didn't have much to begin with. So in China, as well as in Eastern Europe, it's a completely different mindset. It has nothing to do with this idea of inflation and stuff like that. They are coming from countries that were communists. They do not trust their government. All right? So they're not buying it as a hedge against inflation and hyperinflation and all that. They could care less about that stuff. This is just simply an insurance policy against the government. Why do you have so many Chinese running over to the United States buying property? The Chinese are the biggest ticket buyers of real estate in the United States right now.
And I would say in Canada as well.
Sure. They're just trying to get off the grid. Everybody it has any clue as to what's really coming, they're trying to get off the grid.
I saw an article that said China has brought in deposit insurance for bank accounts, and it said this is bad news. Why would it be bad news?
Largely because, they have problems over there with their banks as well. They've lent a lot of money on real estate at excessively high prices, and that's why a lot of people are trying to get out. They're trying to invest as much money as they possibly can over here. I can tell you 20 years ago, right in Philadelphia, because I used to advise Temple University, etc., and you got Penn State. The bulk of the foreign students were Japanese. Now it's all Chinese.
And I think just before the break, we'll mention here that we're going to be talking about something that came up in ArmstrongEconomics.com, turning water into gasoline. We'll do that right after the break.
More and more people are looking to the internet for intelligent, riveting, and thought-provoking interviews. To advertise on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com, call 604-699-8600, 604-699-8600.
In Goddard we trust.
Welcome back to the Goddard Report. My guest is Martin Armstrong of ArmstrongEconomics.com. This article is an eye-opener. The Germans have developed a system where you say they combine water and carbon dioxide, and at the other end, they get motor fuel. Maybe explain that to us.
Well, you have actually a university in Israel doing the same thing. So we put on the site there the company, and they've built a machine. It's actually working, and it's doing effectively what nature would do to create it to begin with. So kind of like synthetic diamonds. And this is one of the aspects that people have to understand about markets. Back in 97, we put out a forecast that oil would decline to about $10 into 99, and then we said we're going to run up to 100. Well, it went past our target to about 160, but everybody would say, "Oh, that's ridiculous! Come on, the world couldn't exist at $100 oil." Right now, most of the oil production cost is over 65. So you have to understand, oil had to go up. By going up, what happens? Then you create the incentive for alternatives. I just went to Amsterdam. You come out, you hop into a cab. They have Teslas. Electric cars over there are all over the place. I mean, taxi cabs are Teslas. So it's quite interesting how much everybody has been saving. And, I mean, you go to Amsterdam, and there are hundreds and hundreds of thousands of bicycles. There's a whole, double-decker garage just for bicycles that people park there, take the train home, come back into town, just get their bike and ride. They're not using cars. So you're seeing a lot of this developing. You have, more efficient cars, but BMW just came out with an i8 with a 250-mile range. This is what's happening. I mean, and these things are altering dramatically. We've increased our technology with shale, etc., so that the U.S. can actually be an exporter of oil now. And Saudi Arabia, the rest of them, what's happened is they got used to high oil prices. They escalated their spending. Now, as oil is going down, instead of being like they were, well, we'll cut production to support it, they need the money, so they're selling more because they're going into deficits. So it's absolutely crazy. You have Azerbaijan, etc., and where the oil comes basically from the Caspian Sea basin. So it's easy oil to get. They're scared to death that Russia, its oil is up north, okay? It's hard to get. So Russia's cost of production is about 65. And so they're very much concerned that Russia will simply move in and take the former Soviet countries, largely because they have oil that it will not be able to access. So there's a lot going on. And oil, if it closes below $75 at year end, it's going down.
Is oil obsolete or
interesting?
I was going to say, is oil obsolete or becoming obsolete?
Sure. You're getting into this is a change that the old economist Schumpeter, he basically said it best. And he called these waves of creative destruction. So what happens is, all the horse and buggy guys were objecting, to the introduction of the combustion engine. Put them all out of business. So you have these changes in technology that come roughly about every 50-some years. And we're just in one of these phases where technology is changing dramatically on the commodity side, as well as, the internet and things of this nature. So a lot of it does, to some degree reduce labor. I mean, you can pull in a parking garage over here and there isn't anybody there. You put your card in to get in the machine, you leave, that's it. Nobody takes your money anymore. So,
if
things
the value,
are changing.
I was going to say, if the value of oil goes down, I mean, the governments in Canada and the U.S. are addicted to oil revenue. Look at the taxes they put on gasoline and the royalties they charge producers. Are they going to have to change the way they think?
Just look at what they did to cigarettes. All right, they called it the vice tax or the sin tax, taxed the heck out of them. Then people started stopping smoking. What are they doing now? They're putting taxes on electronic cigarettes. Why? Just because they need the money.
I was going to say, too, if electronic cars become very popular and you're just plugging in at home, they're going to put a road tax on that somehow, aren't they?
Absolutely. They'll put more taxes on electricity. You have some municipalities that are trying to now tax solar panels, that if you're generating your own electricity in your own house, they want to tax you on it because you're not taking it from them.
The same reason they don't want you to produce your own alcohol.
It's, absolutely. All this stuff it's all about money. And when you begin to realize that, you'll see that the government is addicted to taxation. And they have always approached things. They never manage their spending ever because they always assumed there's going to be enough people to tax. Well, the birth rate's declining, and so you have a huge divergence where the pension funds are not being funded anymore. It's crazy. In Japan, they're calling it the celibacy syndrome. I mean, not only is the birth rate collapsed, they're not even dating.
Right, they have their dating pillows or something like that.
It's nobody wants to get married. They don't have confidence in the future to have children. So you find that the age women are having children has been increasing dramatically in the United States, North America. And this is things are changing. They're moving and shaking, and what existed 20 years ago is different. It's just completely different. And you just have to look, and even technology is just a tremendous difference.
How big of an impact is 3D printing going to have?
Everything. I mean, honestly, I don't even write. I was just laughing today that somebody asked me for a check. I don't even have checks anymore. Everything's automatically, the rents, whatever, credit cards, it's just automatically taken from your account.
I was going to say, you just wave your cell phone at it.
I don't have one of those, but, you go to Starbucks, they just hold up the cell phone.
Maybe that's really where the money is then. It really proves that money is just electronic and you don't need the cash anymore.
You really don't. Adam Smith was correct. The wealth of a nation is not how much gold it has, not how much land it has, or anything. It is the productivity of its people. And that is the wealth of a nation. I mean, if a meteor came down and was made of pure gold and landed in Bangladesh, fine. Is it going to make Bangladesh the world economy? No. What will happen is, fine, they'll have money to spend, and they'll spend it. But, the same thing if you look at Spain. Spain came back with all this money from gold and silver from the Americas. They didn't invest it in the economy. They paid Frenchmen to stand there and move stuff, and they all lived high on the hog, and they defaulted 7 times. They spent everything they had. And what did they have left? Nothing, because they did not invest it back in the economy.
With oil losing its value, do you see it bouncing back from the levels it's at?
Oh, sure. You're always going to have the movements back and forth. The real key number to watch is $75 at year end. If it closes below that, fine, you can rally back to 80, but it's going to head much lower.
Well, everybody in the world is fracking now. Israel apparently is about to surpass Saudi Arabia as a natural gas producer. So they don't really need the North American product or wherever it's coming from because they're finding alternatives.
Exactly. Plus, the United States really doesn't need the Middle East. And there are very, very significant issues in the Middle East going on. Most people haven't looked at it, but we did publish a chart of the Sunni rebellion over the ISIS. There's something more here than just religion. All right, it has always been a religious clash between the Sunnis and the Shiite. Yes. However, when you take a map of the Middle East and you draw on it where the oil wells are, you'll see that the Shiites are the ones that have controlled the oil. So the Sunni, yes, they're beheading people and ranting and raving and very nice. What are they doing? They're basically seizing oil wells. Okay, so it's a little bit more than just religion. And they basically, behind the scenes, it's been feeling that the Shiites have had it too good for too long, and they are the starkly minority within Islam. Why
would billionaires in a stable, very economically strong Kuwait be backing ISIS?
Well, largely you have a lot of problems all the way around in the area. The economy is turning down, and you have North America is the only place holding up the whole world right now. You have the economy turning down, Japan, China, you have Europe, looks like it's just going to frack apart itself. And the only thing holding everything up is there still some economic growth here. When we turn down next October, that's it. There's nobody else holding anything else up. So the side of the next downdraft we're going to see in the economy is going to be much worse than the last one. They keep building in intensity.
I was just going to ask you before we go, what do you believe will be the biggest economic shocker in the new year?
Most of it really is the debt crisis within Europe. The capital has been pushing dramatically on Switzerland and also in Germany. I mean, German rates have been forced into the negative. Why? Because honestly, the Europeans, when I go over there, they're betting that the euro is going to crack. And what are they doing? They're buying all German bonds because they believe they'll end up with Deutschmarks. That's the trade. That's what everybody believes over there. It's not being talked about in the newspaper because it's not politically correct. They are betting against Europe.
That Germany's going to pull out of the EU.
The whole thing's going to fall apart, and they think that when it does, they'll get Deutschmarks.
Is that when Russia plans to swoop in?
Russia's probably being pushed in the same way by the fact that oil prices are going down, and this is when you get war. All right, nobody fights when they're fat and happy. All right, as soon as they lose something, they get mad. Who caused it? And the West, treating Russia the way they have is dead wrong, absolutely dead wrong. They thought that putting these sanctions that it would make the Russian people throw Putin out. No, it's supported Putin. They looked at it and said, "This is the West doing this to us." So it's very bad because it's given the United States a terrible, terrible image.
Martin, is there a way for people to find out more about some of your findings, a website?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just go to our website. Most of what we put out there, we try to provide as a public service. So most of us, you can look at the blog, etc., and you can see all the postings for the, many years. All that's really for free.
Martin, if we don't get a chance to talk to you before Christmas, best of the season.
Well, same to you. And, we're definitely going to be living in interesting times next year.
Yeah, well, that's what keeps us in business.
Very true.
You've been listening to The Goddard Report at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Comments or questions about our show can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard.
Comments made on The Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.